Sitting here with Robert Kiyosaki, this is not even a dream come true. I never thought I'd ever sit in front of the man and actually be doing an interview. So this is an absolute privilege.
Well, thank you. I'm just an ordinary guy, you know.
Well, in the minds of millions of people around the world, you're a serial entrepreneur, dedicated husband, business partner, thought leader, teacher. I think very much a teacher. You've really helped a lot of people around the world. But amazingly, you're a rugby fanatic.
Yes.
And being in South Africa, you went to the match yesterday. Sadly, we lost.
Well, when you play, two great teams, the Springboks and the All Blacks, my favorite teams, it was really hard to cheer for one side. And there was a great match either way. It was fantastic play.
Yes. I'm very fascinated to find out why you love rugby, but I think it's also because it can teach you a lot in business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Rugby?
Yeah.
Well, I never played rugby until I was already 25, and it started in Florida, and I went out for what we call gridiron. And I love gridiron, but I wasn't passionate about it. And so my friend said to me, let's go play rugby. And I said, well, what's rugby? Because Americans don't know what it is. And this is in the 60s. So I said, he says, I don't know what rugby is either, but they play hard and they drink a lot of beer. And I said, well, the beer drinking sounds good. And the moment I packed down, they put me in a breakaway. The moment I packed down, I knew the game. It's like I had come home. So what I say to people is it's important you find your game in life, be it, and it's just a metaphor. It's like my wife loves golf, and I hate golf, so I'm not good at golf. And I love football, but I was passionate about rugby, And so because I was passionate about it, the game of rugby carried me all over the world. I played in London, New Zealand, Australia, Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii, Canada, and America. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you find your passion, for the game, whatever it is. So that's why rugby is just a metaphor and encouraging people to find their passion in life.
Have you, in the game, did you actually learn anything that you applied to business over the years? Oh
yeah, rugby. In my opinion, people think golf's the greatest game. Some people think ping pong is the greatest game, bowling, whatever you think is your choice. But what I loved about rugby, it had nothing to do with your physical size. Like basketball, it helps to be 6'6", 6'6". Yes. And in football, they're big. Whereas rugby and soccer, they're generally skinny guys. Yes. Whereas rugby can short, tall, big, fat, skinny, it didn't make any difference. You just wanted to play the game. And that to me is a real team. We're not looking for anything special in a person. We just want the guy in business who wants to play the game of business. Because business is a team sport, but not for everybody. Most people in business are self-employed or small business. They're like golfers. They play the game of business on their own. In true terms, if you can do your business on your own, like if I'm a real estate agent, yes, then I'm not really a business person, I'm a craftsman. I can do it on my own. If I make shoes all by myself, I'm a craftsman. Right. So anything you can do on your own, like a medical doctor is a craftsman. But when you become an entrepreneur, like Elon Musk, you have to have a team. Mm-hmm. And so there's two types of businesses, small and big businesses, team sports.
At Master of Wealth, where I had the opportunity to listen to you over the weekend, you speak about having the right team.
Yes.
When you're in business, who do you want to be on your side?
Well, let me just tell the story. That's the most important thing. Success in anything in life, whether you're in business or not, is really dependent upon your social networks. Who your friends are. There's people who get depressed, have no friends after a while. So it's really cognizant that you are aware of who your friends are. The thing about birds of a feather flock together, yes, losers hang out with losers. But so do average people. Average people hang out with average people. So if you want to be the best, like if I wanted to play for the Springboks or the All Blacks, I'd have to be the best. Mm-hmm. I can't say, I used to play rugby at one time, so can I come play with you? No, you can't play rugby with us. So the big part about business and network is your team requires you to be better than you are.
Yes.
If you're a lousy person, a great team will not have you on the team. That's number one. Number two is a team, a labor union, like a teachers union. My father, the poor dad, head of a teachers union, they're all the same people. They're all teachers. Do you know what I mean? And that's why they're not that successful, most of them. To be successful in business, you need different professions. So I have to have at least one attorney and one accountant on my team. That's minimum. Okay, I got to take that advice because I don't know the law and I don't know accounting. I got to have somebody with excellent sales. I got to have somebody in IT. I got to have somebody who's a CEO. See, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not a CEO. I'm not a good operator. I've also got to have guys who are good at multimedia. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So really what I am is just kind of part of a team in business. So the better my team, the higher standard of my team, the more successful in business I am. And I notice that people who are not successful, they're either hanging out with people who are average or don't really want to be successful, or they themselves are not average. One of the best lessons, kids learn, me as a boy, I remember going out for the baseball team, but I wasn't good at baseball. And so they all say, well, we don't want you on our team. But that's real life, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I remember when I was about 10 years old, I was crying, they don't want me on my team, So my dad, my poor dad, bless his heart, he took me out back and he taught me how to hit the ball and field the ball. And as I got to be a better baseball player, then different teams wanted me. So that's really one of the most important things about business. If you're good, the best teams want you. If you're bad, nobody wants you.
Correct. And you just replicate that as you go along. You
Everything.
take your team with you wherever you go.
Yeah, that's like Success Resources. Richard and Veronica Tan and Lydia and Douglas and all those guys. They're part of my team. You don't see them in with me, but they're like angels to me. They were there from when I started in 1996 with Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes. How did that come about, by the way?
Well, I got sick and tired of my last business, and I'd made enough money. I retired in 1994. I was 47. I had plenty of money, and Kim was 37. And I said, okay, next game. What's the next game? So Kim and I created the cash flow game, and I was writing Rich Dad Poor Dad. And as I was finishing Rich Dad Poor Dad, this guy Richard Tan calls from Singapore, and Kim says, hey, there's this guy Richard Tan from Singapore. He wants to come and speak in Singapore. I said, about what? He says, he doesn't care, just show up. And so in 1996, I flew to Singapore with Zig Ziglar and some of the guys I used to look up to, I really looked up to Zig Ziglar. He's a great man, a great Christian, great, honest man. So to share the stage with Zig Ziglar was great. And I got up there, and for the very first time, I presented the story of here's my rich dad and here's my poor dad. And so that's why, as part of your social network, your professional team, everybody should have a Richard and Veronica Tan on their team for Success Resources.
How did you end up writing the book after that?
I already wrote the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was finishing it all up, and then I didn't know what to do, but it was the first time I ever did it, presented it.
Well, talking about books, because you've had enormous mileage with Rich Dad Poor Dad, everybody's got it.
Thank you.
Now we're talking about the next big thing that Robert Kiyosaki is talking about, the big crash.
Yeah, it's really the next thing that is coming, and it's the real reason I wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. See, we're talking today in 2015. Well, back in 1983, I could see this global economic crisis coming. And, I said, well, what am I going to do about it? So that's why I wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. And if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, lesson number 1, chapter 1 says, the rich don't work for money. And that sounds strange for most people because, you go to a job to work for money, you want to get a paycheck for money, you want to get dividends and money and all this. Well, the reason I wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad is money is the problem, one of the problems of this economic crisis. You see, every government in the world the US, Germany, Japan, Russia, China, South Africa, Zimbabwe, they're all printing money. And when you print money, it always ends badly. Money from heaven takes us all to hell, as they say. And so the U.S. right now is so deeply in debt that it is estimated that America, on off-balance sheet, is estimated to be 100 trillion to 250 trillion in debt.
I can't even configure
They
that.
cannot pay for it, and so something's going to happen. So that's why Chapter 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, written and published in 1997, says the rich don't work for money. And that's what Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Cash Flow Game is about. You want to take money, convert your money into an asset, and the asset produces cash flow. I want cash flow. I don't want a paycheck. It's really strange for people because paycheck is the second most highly taxed income you can get. Plus it's devaluing. I don't save money because they're printing money. I also don't invest for the long term in the stock market simply because it's so high right now, it can go down further than it can go up. So I stay out of it. Plus the stock market is rigged today with a thing called HFT, high frequency trading. So the average person doesn't have a chance in the stock market. So if you have a job, you're saving money, and you're investing for the long term in the stock market, you're being ripped off by our leaders. Our governments, the banks, financial institutions, politicians, labor unions. America is bankrupt. South Africa is on the verge of bankruptcy. The IMF just stepped in here. Zimbabwe is bankrupt. Greece just went bankrupt. Puerto Rico is going bankrupt. Argentina is going bankrupt. China is in very serious trouble. So that's why Chapter 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad says the rich don't work for money. We work to acquire assets that go up and that hold their value and produce cash flow. The strangest thing I say to people, I don't want a paycheck. I want cash flow. It's different.
Tell me, when you looked at it then, in the 80s, has the picture changed?
It's got clearer.
Okay.
You see, in 1983, it was fuzzy. I was just kind of going on gut feel.
Was it really gut feel, or
Yeah,
did
that's
you
all it was.
see indicators?
Yeah,
or
I was like, and then, but this is the good thing. I never did well in school. I was bored the whole time. But I was just kind of curious. Why don't we have, number one, why don't we have financial education in schools? And why is everybody just chasing the dollar or chasing the rand or chasing the yen? I said, that's like slavery. And then by then I knew, in 1983, I knew President Nixon had taken the dollar off the gold standard in 71. So they were printing money. So that's why, my rich dad said to me, he said, don't work for money. He says you've got to either use debt to acquire real estate, or like my books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those are assets. Every quarter from all over the world, money comes in. So I produce assets that bring money in. I own about 8,000 apartment houses, oil wells, hotels, golf courses. I'm an entrepreneur. Okay? So that's the difference.
And do you feel that the crash is still going to come in 2016?
It's already hit.
Is it going to
No,
grow?
it's hitting
Is it
harder
hit
and harder.
and harder?
Yeah, you see what happened is, you look at what happened to Detroit. Detroit went bankrupt.
Yes.
It went bankrupt because of incompetent General Motor. The corporate leaders are incompetent. Greedy labor unions, greedy public service union. The teachers union. They bankrupt the city. Same thing happened in Sacramento. Same thing happened in Stockton. And the same thing happened in Vallejo, California. Chicago's going to go bankrupt next. We're bankrupting everybody. So you look at what happened in Zimbabwe and Greece. When the IMF steps in, International Monetary Fund means IMF'd, that they're going to shut you down.
But now we've got 6 months to 2016. What can people do? It's a very short time. How can they hedge their bets? What can they do to save themselves from?
Well, that's why I support Success Resources, and Success Resources supports me. It's very simple. You need new ideas. The reason people are in trouble is they're running on old ideas. Like my mom and dad said to me, go to school, get a job, work hard, climb the corporate ladder, save money, get out of debt, invest for the long term. And people are still operating on that, computer programming. That's why they're in trouble. So Success Resources brings in, different people with some radical ideas, some novel ideas and all this. And every day you spend with them, you're being, new ideas are pumped into your head, because then ideas affect you mentally, then emotionally and spiritually, physically and financially. You need new ideas today. because everything's changing. This gap between the rich and the poor is so excessive today that it's going to cause, chaos. There's going to be rioting. Chicago is also already the most violent city in America because the whole, the government infrastructure is breaking down. Here in South Africa, you have Eskom breaking down, public service are breaking down, police force is corrupt, as we all know. And I'm not blaming the people. That's what happens when there's no financial education in schools, and our money system, the rand, the dollar, the yen, the peso, they're all corrupt. So that's why.
How do we fix this? How do we start turning the wheel the other way?
Well, number one is financial education. Financial education is kind of self-defense. It's like karate, I mean, then you don't have to believe I don't believe what any politician tells me. Oh, the economy's fine, don't worry. Stock market's always going to go up. Yes. Pay your taxes, don't worry about this, If you have financial education, you can pick and choose what you know is real. For example, in America, I'm not Republican or Democrat, not pro-Obama or against Obama, but he says unemployment is now 4%. Well, the real number is 24%. Now, how in the world can the government have 4% and 24%? Because they just changed the way they measure it. You see, if I work for one day and I'm unemployed for the rest of the year, because I work for one day, I'm not unemployed. They just changed the metrics via which they measure the lies. Yeah. So we're being lied to by our own government. Our central banks are printing money. Our government officials are, in Arizona, a police officer works for 20 years. The year before they retire, they get $1 million bonus and $185,000 pension for life. And they're only like 50 years old. That makes that's good for the police officer. I'm happy for the police officer, but the city goes broke. Then they can't fund parks, they can't fix this, they can't fix water and all this. So that's what I'm saying. The public sector unions and our trade unions are ripping us off, as well as so is the politicians, so are the banks, so is Wall Street and all this stuff. So that's why financial education, I just kind of know what's happening. I don't dislike, I love my police officers and all this. And I don't blame them for trying to put money in their pocket. But without financial education, that's all they can do. Yes. Like, here in South Africa, the reason people run for public office is so they can put money in their pocket. And the reason they join the union is so they can put money in their pocket. If you're not a public servant, or you're just on the street, you're in trouble, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have anybody to protect you. Mm-hmm. So with financial education, the individual at least knows how to maneuver and protect themselves.
Okay. So Success Resources got a vital role to play in this.
It is essential. You really need new ideas.
Yes.
If you're going to school, those are old ideas. Go to school and get a job. I know they're talking about entrepreneurship, but most of those guys aren't entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. They don't know what it's like not to have a paycheck. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a paycheck since 1978, and I'm a multimillionaire. Most of these school teachers who are union members, God bless the souls of my poor dad, they don't know how to make millions of dollars without a paycheck. Yes. Paycheck's one of the most vicious things there is. So you come to Success Resources for different ideas and, people who think outside the box and all that. So you go home and you can think differently and make different choices for you and your family.
Robert, if you're going to write another book, what area would you cover?
That's a great question because Rich Dad Poor Dad came out in 1997, and I said the most important lesson in there is the rich don't work for money. Most people miss that. That's chapter 1, lesson 1. They say assets and liabilities and all that stuff. And then my latest book is called The Man Who Could, you cut that, okay? And the latest book is Second Chance. It's about this economic crisis. So again, I go back to it as in 83, I saw this crisis coming. So I wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad in 97, created my cash flow board game. And in 2015, I wrote the book Second Chance. But where I'm going with all of this is the reason for this economic crisis and the reason we can't trust our money is because where humanity has to go is that we have to come back to values, ethics, morality, legality, and truth. And that's where we have to go. If we don't go that, we're finished. when I was playing on my rugby team, I trusted my rugby team implicitly. I get into business, I don't trust the people I do business with. I go into the Marine Corps, I went to Vietnam and all that. I only flew with 5 guys, but the 5 of us trusted ourselves implicitly. I could count on them, to save me, to fight for me and all this stuff. It's a horrible job, but I could trust. When I got into the business world in 1974, there was no trust. People lying, cheating, screwing, having sex with this, lying, all that stuff. I'm going, holy mackerel.
And it's gotten worse.
It's getting worse and worse and worse, but it starts with our monetary system. Our money system is corrupt, and our bankers of the world and all, they're just ripping everybody else. Government's ripping us off, IMF, World Bank, everybody's ripping everybody off. So ultimately, through all of this saying, is that the final books will be more on, values, trust, integrity, courage, friendship, core units, your social networks and all this. You better start finding people you can do business with, you can trust. That's why I'm not in the stock market. The stock market is good if you play the options market, but I don't know the people I'm doing business with. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But in my little businesses, my little entrepreneurial business, I know everybody I do business with. I trust them with my life. We have a code of honor amongst my advisors and friends. If somebody is cheating on their wife, we'll go talk to them. If you cheat on your wife, you'll cheat on anybody.
Yes.
So, and if somebody is an alcoholic, we'll go talk to them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We're a very tight Marine Corps unit. And ultimately, that's where we have to go as protection against this crisis. The crisis, once again, is a crisis of values, morals, ethics, people breaking the rules, people not knowing the rules, and ignorance. That's got to end. If that doesn't end, there's always a crisis. But it ends with me first. I can't change the world, but I can change me. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Success Resources is about too, is so you come, you change yourself, so you can defend yourself against the world.
You have a very special relationship with Success Resources, and particularly with Veronica and Richard. Tell us a little bit about the people that they are and the organization they run.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I've known them since 1996. And I consider them my personal angels. You see, there are people on earth you can trust. They're always on your side. They'll always give you more. They always treat you well. Their whole team is fantastic. There are people I trust. I'll go anywhere in the world for them. As tired as I am sometimes, I will always do business with them because there are people I can trust. They're part of my team. They're people that, they're angels. That's all I can say. And everybody should have their own set of angels.
Thank you. Thank you very much.